Today we're covering a big portion of Hebrews, and so you may want to spread this out over the next couple of days. Hebrews chapter 7, 8, and 9. And before I pull out a few things here, a few thoughts, I want to tell you kind of the big idea, the overarching ideas that are in this text. And first is this idea of a person named Melchizedek. We've talked a little about him. You've seen his name, and we haven't really talked about who he was. And so I want to give you a couple ideas on who Melchizedek is in just a moment. But also the other thing you'll see in these three chapters is this idea that Jesus Christ is our high priest and our perfect sacrifice. And Hebrews actually talks about that a lot, because remember, it's written to Jewish believers. They would have understood the Old Testament way of worship. They'd actually would have lived in it earlier in their lives. And now that they'd come to Christ and lived underneath the new covenant of grace, they were having to learn to live differently. But underneath the old covenant system, they would have to take an animal to the temple when they sinned. And then once a year, they would all have to do this, take an animal. The priest would take that animal, shed its blood, burn it on the altar. This is a pretty gory worship service. And then go into the next inner room and burn incense before the Lord, as if to offer prayers of forgiveness up to the Lord. And then there was that inner room, that holy of holies, the most holy place that we've talked about a little bit. And only the high priest could go in there, and only once a year. And first he would have to make sure his life was sinless and offer a sacrifice for his own sin. Then he could go in there to make atonement for the people of God. And then he got to come back out of God's presence. And at the cross, whenever Jesus died, the veil of that room was torn from top to bottom, as if to say to us, no longer is it only this high priest that can go in once a year. Now, anyone by faith in Jesus can have access to God. And so the holy place is open to us. And so let's talk about who Melchizedek was. Look at verse 7, chapter 7, verse 1. It says, Melchizedek was king of the city of Salem and also priest of God Most High. When Abraham was returning home after winning a great battle against the kings, Melchizedek met him and blessed him. And then Abraham took a tenth of all he had captured in battle and gave it to Melchizedek. And so here you have Abraham, that great patriarch that we've talked about. And actually, an army had attacked his family, and he went to return the favor and kind of rescue his family from being captured. And as he did, God gave him victory, and he brings home all this plunder. And he meets this mysterious guy, Melchizedek, on the road, and it says that he gives him a tenth. In other words, he tithes to him. And so it tells us a lot about him, the fact that Abraham either believed he was God or believed he was the direct representative, because he gave him a tenth. He tithed to him as if he was the Lord. So who is Melchizedek? There's kind of two thought processes here. One is that he is just a mysterious priestly guy that we really don't know a lot about, and God doesn't want us to know, and he shows up and then he disappears, and we're just supposed to trust it. That could be the case. It's okay not to understand everything. The other thought, or kind of the area of thought on this, would be that Melchizedek was what we call a Christophany. A Christophany is where Jesus